So I, 23 female, was raised in a very, very religious household. My parents are Muslims, and from the time I was 5 years old, I had to wear the hijab and had religious dogma shoved down my throat. When I was 16, I tried to take off my hijab, and my parents freaked out. My mom even cut off my hair in an attempt to force me to wear the hijab after she insulted me, saying that my hair was ugly anyway, and nobody would want to see it. Eventually, once I was 18, I escaped via uni and had minimal contact with them since. Luckily, I'm in Canada, so there wasn't much they could do to me once I turned 18. My younger brother, Teen, reached out recently to say that my dad is quite sick in the hospital and keeps asking for me and asking if I could come and see him and wear the hijab to give him peace in case he doesn't recover. A part of me wants to see them again, but I have a lot of trauma regarding my hair. It took years to grow it after my mom cut it off, and being forced to stay home with no friends growing up made me quite stunted in uni, which, not gonna lie, makes me very resentful. My brother's very understanding and isn't religious himself. Apparently, my mom and dad chilled out once I went low contact, but he feels bad for my dad and mom, so he's pretty much begging me to do this once for them and then cut them off for good. I'm okay to see my dad in the hospital, maybe not my mom. She was the disciplinarian growing up. But putting the hijab back on is a no-go. I wasted 18 years wearing this, and I can't stomach another second. My boyfriend also understands and has my back, but I can't help but feel a bit guilty. So, am I the idiot? Or should I stay firm and go full no contact if things escalate? I wish we were a normal family. I miss them a lot. But they were cruel to me before I left. I'm the eldest and the only daughter, so all the outward religiosity was placed on me. Not the idiot. If it were just saying you were religious, sure, why be a pain in the butt? On the other hand, this goes beyond that and asks you to sacrifice your individuality and identity to appease your dad. If he genuinely cares for your presence, merely being there, with or without the religious clothing, should be enough for him. This is who you are. If they cannot accept it, that's not your problem. You're an adult and tried your best to appease them when you lived in their house. You make your own decisions now, and hopefully he'll just be happy to see you. You are not responsible for your parents' reactions. They're the only ones who can control how they react. If you could get a therapy session ASAP, they can help you process how you feel about your father's health, and if it'll re-traumatize you if you go back home. You could start small. Get your brother to help you call your dad and talk on the phone. I agree with the FaceTime, but OP should not go and visit him. A passport can easily be taken, and as his only daughter, there might be pressure to marry you off before anything dire happens to him. Still determining what country she'd be returning to, but it can happen in any country. I also have a feeling during the whole story of what if it's all a trap? Maybe dad is really sick, maybe he isn't. Could this be an honor thing? Careful there, girl. Don't go back without being sure you'll be safe and free to leave again. I really would hope your family wouldn't do so, but it's just something to consider. If they've already assaulted you, cutting off your hair, there's a chance they'll do it again in some way. You may need to go no contact. Update. I agree. I think I should stay away, to be honest, and maybe do a video call. When I visited them during my second year of uni, I was 19. It's always my mom making a fuss. She screamed at me when she saw me without a hijab. She was convinced I was having orgies at uni and threw a glass at me. That was the last time I saw them. I've messaged my siblings, but my youngest brother, Teen, is the only one who still wants a relationship with me. The rest think I'm a witch destined for the bad place. Thank you all. I didn't even realize how angry I still was until I wrote it all out. I did a pretty good job just ignoring my upbringing and the associated trauma. It was easy since uni was a fresh start for me. But now I realize I should probably talk to someone about this. I'm currently in a leg and arm cast due to an accident, so I temporarily moved back home with my parents and my younger sister. My parents are currently out of town, so it was just me and my sister. My sister has a tendency of leaving her keys behind or losing them, and usually we have to open up for her. She was going out to a party Friday night, and I warned her to triple check that she had her keys before she left. Surprise, surprise, she left the keys behind. So she called me at 3 a.m., intoxicated, and told me to open up for her. Getting up was a mission in my condition, and I'd warned, so I told her straight up that I wasn't coming downstairs to open for her, so she should call a friend and stay there for the night. Hung up and then put my phone on D&D. She screamed my name for a while until one of the neighbors told her to stop. So instead of calling a friend, she decided to sleep in the old dog bed outside. I found her there in the morning and woke her up to get inside. She angrily yelled at me for making her sleep in the dog bed. She also found a tick on her later and blames that on me too. We've been fighting over this, so here we are for some impartial voices. I feel bad that she slept outside, but I also feel like that was a poor choice on her part. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. You didn't make her sleep outside. She chose to sleep outside instead of trying to call a friend or remember her keys. This is on her. You told her to check and she didn't. If she's old enough to be out getting intoxicated, then she's an adult. A 10-year-old can remember their keys for coming home from school. And if she had called you, she easily could have called someone else. I've been disabled in that way, and getting up the stairs took 10 minutes of solid, careful effort that hurt like heck, regardless of how careful I was. Once I was up, I was not coming down. The sister's having a learning experience. If anyone wakes up and lets her in, regardless of whether or not she has her keys, it gives her no motivation to make absolutely sure she has them. No, that wasn't fun for her. Maybe now she'll remember to take her keys. I disagree. You are the idiot, OP. I don't think it's reasonable to leave an intoxicated person on their own in that kind of situation, even in your injured state. Even if you could not reasonably have gotten up, I think you shouldn't have hung up and should have remained in contact with your sister until a friend had picked her up, or you determined it was safe for her to sleep in the dog bed until morning. I could never leave my sister locked out of the house when I was inside. If it takes 10 minutes to get downstairs, it takes 10 minutes. I can't see this as anything but heartless. For real, I cannot ever imagine doing this to anyone, never mind my own sister. OP, you are a monster. You state that you weren't able to go down and open the door the previous night, but had no issues doing it in the morning? Why? Was it really due to your injury, or the fact that it was a mild inconvenience? As others have said, it's not safe to leave an intoxicated person like that outside. She's your sister, and they took you in when you needed their help. Before you come at me, I've actually had surgery and was in a cast for 2 months with minimal mobility, and I would have opened the door for my sister if I was in your place. My husband travels for work and regularly works long hours, so our children don't see him every day, and they go weeks without seeing him in person sometimes. We had a fight over it recently, so he's been home a lot more. Our daughter asked him yesterday when he was going home. She's a toddler, and she's convinced herself that he doesn't live with us, and he only visits sometimes because he isn't here every day like I am. My husband was upset, especially since he couldn't convince her that he really did live here, and he brought it up before we went to bed because he felt I should have done more to make her realize he did live here and he couldn't always be home because he was working. I asked him what he expected, and he said I was kicking him when he was already down. He's also blaming me partly for the situation because I'm the reason we don't live in the same city as their HQ, and he's been angry with me all day. Am I the idiot? Edit. He took the job knowing he had to travel, and we used to live there before we had a temporary breakup. I moved when we broke up and refused to return because his family and my dad lived there. They were the reason we originally broke up, so I don't want to live anywhere near them. You are the idiot. I'm sorry, but this is on you. I grew up with my dad being a long-haul truck driver. I would see him for about 3 days every 2 to 3 weeks. I always knew he lived with my mom and me, and I counted down the days until I could see him again. My mom would say things like, "Daddy will be home in 2 days," Or we're going to go on a trip when Dad gets home. When he was gone. She always emphasized that we were his home. It sounds like you're letting your bitterness that he's gone so much get in the way of making this easier for your kids. You don't want to correct her because it gives you a point in the fight with your hubby. That's pretty rude to your spouse and also not fair to your daughter. Don't involve her in this. It would help if you tried communicating with the other adult, like an adult, rather than weaponizing your child. Lady, he's doing what he's supposed to do to support the family. Your family. Do you actually think he likes being away from his family like he is? It sounds to me like you resent him and are not putting effort into your daughter and explaining that Daddy's away at work and will be home. Why else would she think he doesn't live there? But on the other hand, maybe he just wants to be away from you. I wouldn't blame him for that. My wife, 38, and I, 38 male, have 2 kids, a preschooler and a little older. A little over a week ago, my wife came down with a virus that won't be named. No one else in the family has gotten sick. We've tested multiple times, and we've pretty much secluded my wife in our bedroom. I've been doing my best to keep things in order, and I like to think I've been doing okay. My wife has told me multiple times during the past week how grateful she is for me, taking care of everything while she's sick, and how I deserve a break to do something for myself once she starts to feel better. Yesterday morning, my wife woke up feeling much better and finally tested negative, and by the end of the day, she had no symptoms. She kept herself in our room most of the day just to be safe, but she didn't require me to take care of her like I had been the previous few days. Last night, she thanked me again for all that I did and said I deserved to take some time for myself. I told her that I'd been thinking about that and said I'd like to stay home by myself this coming Saturday to have some peace and quiet. The issue is that Saturday is her family's Thanksgiving gathering because people have other plans for Thanksgiving Day. She didn't like my idea one bit and told me that I couldn't skip her family Thanksgiving just because I wanted to have a quiet day at home. I told her that she told me multiple times to take some time for myself, and due to our schedule and other family commitments, this Saturday is the best chance for me to have time for myself until after the new year. Her issues are that it's a long drive to her parents' house, 3 hours, and they don't have space for us to stay overnight. She doesn't want to make that drive with both kids by herself. She also doesn't like the idea of me skipping a family gathering for no real reason other than wanting a break. We argued about it, and I told her that I don't like that she told me to find time for myself, only to go back on that and make it seem like I have to find time that's convenient and acceptable to her. I told her I didn't want to wait another 6 weeks to get time for myself. She asked me what I would do if I stayed home, and I told her I would probably just stay home in pajamas, watch college football, play video games, and maybe pop a couple of edibles. That set her off even more, and she told me that if that's how I'm going to spend that time, then I need to come to her family Thanksgiving and find a more suitable time to do that sort of thing. She feels it isn't fair to stick her with the full stress of taking the kids on a long drive to a family gathering without me there to help. I told her that if I'm only allowed to take time for myself when it's convenient for her, then she shouldn't tell me multiple times that I deserve a break. I know if I just stay home, she'll be angry, but she skipped family gatherings on my side before, and I never guilted her about it. Once she was burnt out from work and wanted a rest day. The other time, she had just gotten home from a friend's funeral and wanted a day at home to decompress. Both times I supported her decision. So am I the idiot? Edit. I'm Indian. For a little context, my father-in-law insisted on giving a toast at our wedding and thought making a joke about how his daughter married the only Indian who isn't a doctor would be funny. I will put this as politely as I can. Her family and I tolerate being in the same place for short periods. Not the idiot. There's clearly a toxic dynamic surrounding your extended family involving racial issues, and your wife is not respecting the fact you need time to rest. The nail in the coffin, however, is that your wife is skipped out on your family gatherings due to her being burnt out or mentally unwell. So why are you not able to do the same? You've done so much for me. You should take some time off for yourself, but do it under my terms when it's convenient for me and meets my approval. I don't understand everyone acting like 3 hours each way is an impossible road trip to do with your own kids. Dude, if you have money for edibles, you can pay for a hotel for her for the night so she doesn't have to drive 6 hours round trip. You need couples counseling at the very minimum. For now, hold your ground about this Thanksgiving. If you don't, it's only going to be harder to do so in the future. Buddy, at what point will you decide to grow a backbone? You shouldn't have to be exposed to this. More importantly, your children shouldn't have to be exposed to it. I can't believe that a spouse who loves and respects you and who loves and feels a normal amount of protectiveness toward her children would allow this to continue, let alone demand that it continue. You need to talk seriously about how this affects your children during their formative years. People who are supposed to love them are teaching them to hate or be ashamed of themselves and their father. There's a cookbook that's been in my family for a few generations now and was started by my grandma's grandma. The book is exceptionally fragile now and held up, but it's also something I made a digital copy of with backups because it's really more of an heirloom to look at and not use. I have the cookbook now and have cooked many recipes for many people. There's one particular cake in it that has been a hit with my in-laws. Mother-in-law asked me recently for the cookbook so she could try out the recipe and make it for the family and some of her friends. I told her I couldn't give her the book, but would happily share the recipe. She flipped out, accused me of not trusting her, and would not listen to the reason for not handing her the book. She told me I was hogging food, and that's never a good move, especially with in-laws. My husband had my back and told his mom she was being ridiculous, but she said I was an idiot and was very unfair. Am I the idiot? She told me I was hogging food, and that's never a good move. LMAO, what? That's actually hilarious. The level of entitlement here is really impressive. It's a family heirloom. She has zero claims on the original. At this point, I wouldn't even give her the cake recipe. Something tells me she wants more than just one recipe. You are not the idiot here. When it gets damaged, she just says, oops, and tells you that you're overreacting, and it's just a book. I cannot fathom her demanding a cookbook from you when you're perfectly fine sharing the specific recipe she asked for. Therefore, I would, number 1, not give her the book, number 2, not give her the recipe, and number 3, never make that cake when she's present again. Oh, I'd make the cake. Every time it's appropriate to bring a cake, it would be that cake, your special cake. And when people compliment me how good it is, I would gloat, subtly and with all apparent modesty. It makes me wonder what her actual intentions were. Was she going to try to keep the book? Try to make a profit from it? Ruin it because she doesn't like you? I could list reasons all day, but she said she wanted a recipe for a specific cake. So what's wrong with just giving her the recipe? I agree that mother-in-law's entitlement is really comical here. She had a plan for OP's family heirloom cookbook, and she was right to keep mother-in-law's grubby paws off of it. I would give her a fake torn-out page of the recipe, place it in a picture frame for mother-in-law to put up and display proudly on her wall since it means so much to her. Of course, it is up to you if you want to decide to modify the recipe in any way as you're making a fake copy. When the in-laws wonder why mother-in-law can't make it as good as OP, you can insert whatever quirky or smart comment you want about her there.